All right. All right. Hannah, you on there?
Sure am.
Perfect. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Policy and Finance Committee meeting on this Friday, October 28th. I will call it to order. With that, we'll get out of housekeeping first. I would take a motion to approve the minutes of September 23rd, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 No one else can be opposed, so there we go. All right. With that, we have several items on today's agenda. The first one will probably take up the majority of our time. The other ones aren't actually that long, but they need to start some discussions that will probably we've got meetings scheduled for next month also. We'll probably continue part of that discussion next month, but we want to get them started here today. With that, we will start with the first agenda item, which is our continuation of our ARPA application discussion. This is our third round of reviews. It is my goal, desire, and actually I will hold us all here, if possible, to make this our final discussion on this topic. That being the goal, that we could pass out these recommendations today, get them in front of the governing body, obviously not next Tuesday, but our third week of the month, since we don't have a meeting on November 8th, with the hope that in December we can, or whatever that is, the 15th, whenever that is, and then get it maybe voted on at one of those meetings in December so that all the groups who receive funds know that headed starting January 1, what they have and don't have. I will say a couple things here first before we get started, then turn it over to my colleagues before we start going back through the applications. I guess my word for today is perspective. That's what I ask everybody here to have. We started with 85 applications asking for almost $35 million of a pot of $10 million. Today we have in front of us 48 applications. We're at about $10.5 million. So we've got a little under $500,000 to cut today. We are going to be making those cuts because at the end of the day, that's what we've got to do to get us to that $10 million number. It wasn't that long ago, just over a year ago, when none of us even knew we were going to have these dollars. They weren't part of the conversation. They just sort of came down. So when people were doing their budgeting and strategic planning and design for the future, these were not even part of that process. So while some of us wished, obviously, it could be a little more, we're very happy we have what we have. So that's why I say we're going to have to make a few cuts today, but perspective is, remember, a year ago we didn't have any of these dollars. And so that's what I've tried to hold on to a little bit as we walk through it. My goal, and I don't know if this is my colleagues, but I can only speak for myself, but I believe it is, I don't want to walk out of here having cut anybody who still remains all the way. That's the easiest call. The easiest way we could cut $500,000 today is, I can tell you right, there's one or two projects we could say, you're out and we're done, let's go home. I prefer and have tried to work through my decision-making process to say that everybody who's here today, all 48 of you still left, will leave here today with something. For some of you, it may not be everything that's still on this ledger because I still have $500,000 to cut, but I want to make sure that everybody we have left gets something out of this process. So that has been my perspective working through this, just so everybody knows how I've approached it. So I may have some numbers here or there that are kind of weird. Like, what do you mean something in 50 cents? I don't know if I went that far, but that's why, because it got us to that magic number of 10 million without having to outright cut projects out of the projects at this point. With that, I will start with my colleague to my right, Councilmember Valdivia-Alcala, if you have any comments to make.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo a number of things that you said in that, to me, this is looking at it as a collective initiative and working in a collective mindset, which is how I often prefer to work. There's going to be shared benefit and there's going to be shared sacrifice. I think to do anything less with this small amount of money that we have and the great need that is out there would not be fair. So it really, behooves all of us to just have that open mind, to know that nobody is getting, scrapped and kicked out, the door today, and that I still believe that this has been a very intentional process, one that focuses on equity, one that focuses on the myriad of issues that we have with mental health in our community with affordable housing crisis, in our community with unsheltered issues that we have in our community. And also, I'm going to state again what I believe is the public health crisis that we have with in the issue of racism. And I won't back down from that. And I do believe that with this small amount of $10 million, we have intentionally tried to focus on that. And I just want to thank the chair because I think he's been very thoughtful in his approach. And so we'll see if we agree on where the cuts should be, and then we will proceed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Nager, anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing except for echoing what you both have already stated. I really appreciate the patience and the work that everybody has put towards this, the organizations that have come forward. And yeah, I look forward to getting to work on this so we can go ahead and split up the money and get it to work in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I think we're going to basically stick to the approach we've used the other meetings we've had and just sort of start at the top of this spreadsheet. And then if anyone has a comment on one that they want to suggest any changes to, we can do it. If not, we'll move on to the next one. Once we sort of have gone through the list and made our adjustments, if we think we're ready to make a recommendation out, then we will make that out. So that's our process for today. With that, we will start. I have the Topeka LULAC Multipurpose Senior Center. Their current revision is at $105,000. And I think I'll do what I did similar last time, rotate through if anyone has any. Let's start with me on this one. I am okay with moving forward with that amount of $105,000.
Chair, I would go ahead and agree with that and move forward with the 105.
I agree.
All right. And if I keep moving my thing, that is not going to help me. Here we go. There we go. Topeka North Outreach. This was one that originally they reduced their amount to $15,000. We had a discussion about keeping it at their original ask of $20,000. I am still okay with keeping it at $20,000. Councilmember YWCA?
I appreciate, Chair, that the answers that they brought forth on how they go about obtaining their food and the different schools and organizations or groups that they end up sharing the food with. I think there's always room that we can have for improvement when it comes to what can we do to get more donations as opposed to using funds to actually purchase food in some cases. But I think with the need that is there and how many of these snacks and lunches that hold children over for the weekend and how deeply connected they are in community, I would agree with the 20.
Councilmember Nager, anything to add?
I agree. Going third is nice.
Don't worry, that's about to change. Don't worry. The next is the East Topeka Senior Center. Their ask at this time stands at $47,490. They did revise that down from the original ask. Councilmember Nager, any thoughts?
I am good with this moving forward as is with that cut.
Councilmember YWCA, any thoughts?
I'm just going to add these little additions to remind people as we've gone through these meetings, some of the things that we've talked about. And I think that we see that East Topeka Senior Center is, not only are they just, located in East Topeka, but the amount of services that they provide to citizens across Topeka is commendable. And I would just say commendable with how little they actually asked for and that they were able to shave something off, even off that. And I look forward to seeing them continue to do the services that they provide in community. And I would say yes to this amount.
Yep. And I agree. The next one is ISBA. Their ask is $92,000. That's been their final final review. Councilmember Valdivia-Alcala. Any
I,
thoughts?
I think that I am highly intrigued. I think what we're going to see in some of this, if we agree on things that I hope that we agree on, is that what we're going to see some of this money is going to be to new initiatives. Initiatives that we know are in pockets of community where they are needed, and this is definitely one of them. I think that Lazone's explanation of how he seeks this neighborhood group that he's connected with, I forget the name of the neighborhood group, that has a long history in dealing with grassroots community issues is good, because in this initiative, he'll have some entity to lean on as they move forward with this. So yes, I believe that it should be approved at the $92,000.
Councilmember Nager?
This is one where I know that we had the wiggle room, which I feel kind of weird saying, because obviously, and this goes for all of these organizations, if we could fully fund this, that would be the top priority. But I know that there's the possibility of shortening that year for the project. And while I feel like we could go ahead and approve the 92,000 as is, that would be one thing. I just had an asterisk by it that if we're getting down to, we need to cut $10,000, maybe that's something that we need to be looking at. So, but I didn't have, and I have a stack of papers that I'm still trying to track down because I had notes on another piece of paper. And so that's why I might seem a little less formed on this idea right now. But Chair, if you had any further, and I'm looking around the room trying to find that paper.
No, you're good. I'm supportive currently of leaving it at the 92,000.
Okay.
I think that, and like you, if we can put an asterisk next to it for now to come back and discuss if we think we need to, if we're in that position by the end. I'll just echo, without having to echo it, what Councilmember Valdivia-Alcala said, and I think it serves an important need that can be met immediately if they get the dollars. So I am supportive of this one getting its funding. The next one up is the Patterson Family Child Care. That ask is at $41,280,000, which is a reduction of their original ask. I guess I'm next up. I'm supportive of this. We had a few questions relating to employees and how many children and wages. These dollars will absolutely be essential to sustaining something we cannot lose in this community, which is child care, with possible growth in the future if they can keep the current sustaining. So I am absolutely supportive of the funding for this program. Councilmember Valdivia-Alcala?
I agree, Chair.
Anything to add, Councilmember Nager?
Just that I agree.
All right. The next one is the community center at Ripley Park. They actually have two. One is for $25,696. One is for $19,325. Anything either of you two would like to add?
I'm good with moving forward.
As am I, Chair. I don't know if you've ever been by this area, but they serve a huge need in the Ripley Park area. And I would say a lot of that being children and mothers. So yes.
I agree. Next one is Positive Connections. Which one was this for? This was for the case management of in the tune of $27,000. They did reduce that upon our request, so that's appreciative. I'm supportive of this one moving forward at its current funding level. Anyone like to add anything?
As am I,
Agreed.
Chair. Agreed.
All right. Mirror Inc., the sober living program. That ask is now at $360,000. They've reduced that over the couple of requests by almost half. Councilmember Valdivia-Alcala, anything you want to add here?
I would just say, with the wealth of information that they gave when we asked, it was much appreciated. And to see what they are willing to do in the way of, continued outreach and how much outreach they do at impressive level where they're at now, and that they cut their amount by so much was deeply appreciated. So I would say at the $360,000, yes.
I'm also supportive. My only original concern, and partly just because it wasn't clear in the original application, was to clarify that it will all be spent in this community for patients here, and they gave a resounding yes on our follow-up questions, and so that alleviated any concerns I had. Anything you'd like to add, council member?
I approve this going forward.
All right. Cornerstone of Topeka, transitional housing duplex, $226,256. I am supportive of this one moving forward. It obviously fills a need we absolutely need.
I agree.
And agreed, Chair.
All right. The next one is Open Arms Outreach Ministries. This is for the Community Oasis Project for shelter and food. That ask, which they did, is now at $127,000. After the last round, when we asked for cuts, they did make an additional cut of about $15,000 or so. So I appreciate that. Anyone want to comment on this one?
I did, Chair. I think that this is the one where there is going to be so much work that's going to be done for rooms that are going to be able to house individuals that are unsheltered. And
Yep.
I'm wondering if anyone, can I ask a question if they're here?
Oh, yes, you can.
Okay, is Open Arms Outreach Ministries here?
Anyone here online or in person?
Oh, okay.
No, right there. Literally.
Could you come up so I can ask a question?
Hi,
Hi, can I get your first name?
my name is Charlene.
Charlene?
Yes.
And ma'am? Jeanette, okay. Thank you for the additional information that was asked for. I guess one of the questions I had is that you are specifically using a portion of this money to help house unsheltered individuals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The city is coming up, is launching a new initiative, which is called Equity Access Shelter, which tries to be the single point of care, the single contact location for the unsheltered and chronic unsheltered across Topeka. The reason I'm mentioning that is that this launches officially on November 1st. And if awarded these monies, would you be open to working in any collaborative way as needed? Because we're trying to decrease numbers and track better the unsheltered individuals that are getting sheltered. And I don't know if you currently work with the city of Topeka with Corey Wright, but would that be something that you would be possibly open to just for gathering and maintaining of information? Because we're trying to get information from all of these cross sections of community that maybe the city is not aware of, so we can start doing a better job as a city tracking unsheltered and seeing where they are able to find shelter. Would that be something that you would be open to?
For sure.
Okay.
We're willing to partner with anyone that can help us,
Okay.
reach this mission of holiness.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, they made the cut I had asked for last time, because as much as a garden with a meditation area sounds beautiful, that was the one I had. I was like, I get you, but can we?
Right.
And so with that cut, which has been included, I am fully supportive of this moving forward.
As am I, Chair.
Agreed.
The next one is Habitat for Humanity, Affordable Housing Partnership and Construction, $340,000. They did reduce this over the couple of asks by a little over $135,000. Oh, what did I do with it? Sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Hold on a second.
Yeah, it's 340.
Good gracious. There we go. All right. I am supportive of this one moving forward, just as I was with the other housing projects that we've done, because I know that they will get built and there will be people in them before we know it. I guess it's as simple as that for me. So.
And Chair, I would agree with that, and I would just say, moving forward, my goal is going to actually be very intentional at the council level about explaining to people what affordable housing actually is, as is stated in our housing study, and I believe that Habitat gets it, and they deliver on it, so I would support this moving forward.
And I agree.
All right. The next one is Community Resource Council. They have one for $214,000. They gave their answers on the same, so I guess at this point I will just jump down to their other request, which was for a total of $900,000 for housing. I guess I will just start here and say this is one of my areas of recommended cuts, sort of. I am supportive of funding this first grant to the tune of $214,000 in its entirety. I would like to recommend that we reduce the $900,000 down to $800,000 to kind of get us closer to our number. So that is one of my suggested cuts. Thoughts, concerns, questions, comments?
We are looking at 900 over to 800.
And Chair,
Yes.
I would agree with that cut. They had, if I am reading this correctly, there were proposed cuts of up to 210 or 234K. I think with the 100K, that's kind of us meeting them halfway with that cut. And it also gets us much closer to awarding this money to people as soon as possible. So I would agree with that 100K. On that second, the creating more affordable housing for LMI individuals.
Chair, I think that this program that CRC is, well, both programs I do believe are novel in approach, and I think that the 100,000 cut, while that's a lot of money, 100,000, I still believe that there's going to be able to have a lot of good that can be done with that amount, especially when we are looking at the serious issues that we have with contract for deeds. So, yes, I would approve this. And I just also want to say, I've gotten 2 texts so far that live streaming isn't happening.
Oh.
Is anyone? Okay, then I'll let them know it's their problem. Okay.
All right, then we will at this point make that reduction to the $900,000 grant. And I agree with both of what was indicated. And looking through their process, like as I said when we began, some cuts are going to have to be made. But while $100,000 is a lot, it appears based on their application and their follow-up questions that they can still meet the goals that they're trying to accomplish overall, even with that reduction. So that's why I'm comfortable with making that recommendation. The next one is the Shawnee County Medical Society Health Access. That request is for $20,000. While I have had skepticism over this one from the get-go, I am still, at this point, okay with moving it forward at their $20,000 request. Councilmember Nager may have swung me the other way, so in her previous comments in our last meeting.
And yeah, I am absolutely supportive of this moving forward.
I too, Chair.
All right. The next one is Prevention and Resiliency Services. Their ask now stands at $105,498. That is a reduction from their original requested amount of $335,000. So I know that's been tough for them to make those adjustments, but it's been very appreciative through this process and kind of kept you in the running. So thank you very much. I know that wasn't easy every time we kept asking. Councilmember Valdivia, any comments on this one?
Yes, this is going to this helped me remember that this is going to be one of the questions I bring through when we talk about Spanish materials, et cetera. I think that there had been a commitment on their part to even spend so much on Spanish printed materials, which I would say is very commendable. And, you know, to me, I don't know if we can make this a requisite, but I think when we're really talking about equity, then we really have to get an understanding that we also need more commitment and follow through and action on translation services and on printed materials in Spanish. Yes, there could be other language, but we also know that there is a large Spanish-speaking community in this city. So it's been good to see this throughout the process of questions, but I will have a question for, I don't know if it's finance or city attorney when we're all done with this. So I would say yes.
Anything to add, Councilmember Nager?
No, I do not.
All right. I'm supportive of this one moving forward. And again, I thank them for the working with us on their initial request.
Agreed.
Next is Doorstep Inc. This goes for things like daycare, rental assistance, and other bill assistance. The total request is at $133,000. Any comments, Councilmember Nager?
No, I am supportive of this moving forward as is.
I am also, what I did appreciate on our second round of follow-ups was they gave us some very specific information on how many households and over what length of time they thought these could do. They also, my request last time would remove the LED lighting upgrade, which I understand was important, but that was a cut that they understood and made for us to try to get us a little closer to our goal. So I am also supportive of this moving forward.
Chair, I too, I think that how they were just so descriptive and on point when we asked more about what they provide services for and how many households it would impact. And from rent assistance, utility assistance, transportation, daycare funds, food purchases, hygiene kit items, phone bill, card payments, building, I mean, all of this, the questions that we asked and the way that they just spelled it all out was very, very helpful. And they do good work in communities, so yes, I support.
All right. The next one is Positive Connections. This is for their mobile testing unit. The original request was $180,000. We're now at $150,987. I'm supportive of this one. I not only appreciate that they worked with us on a few of the costs, but the fact that while their focus is HIV and AIDS, that testing unit they have made clear can be used for other problems and issues within the community. And so that's a big bonus to me, that it's going to serve multi-purposes throughout the community. Any comments?
I would just say this is desperately needed in community and that they can move beyond, in addition to HIV testing, to additional testing. I believe strongly it's going to be a huge resource in community, and I support it fully.
Councilmember Nager?
Agreed.
All right. The next one is Strengthening and Equipping Neighborhoods Together, SENT, for mental health services in the High Crest community for $30,000. Councilmember Nager, anything you want to add here?
I am supportive of this moving forward as is. It's addressing a much needed need.
Councilmember YWCA?
Supportive.
Yep, I also do. All right, the next one is Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas. The current ask is $755,588. So I'm going to go first on this one because this is my biggest cut. I would like us to consider making it a flat fee of $500,000, $500,000. I will readily acknowledge up front that is a significant reduction from their original request, which was for $1.5 million. And I still believe by going through their information that this can do them some good and hit some services that we need. But again, I'll be honest, this is one where I had to make a cut somewhere, and this was one that I thought could do it. So I'm going to throw that out there as my suggestion at $500,000 for this one, and then we can go from there.
I know, Chair, that that is a huge amount. However, I agree too that there's going to be a lot that they're going to be able to do with the 500,000, and I also think that what this should be to businesses, corporations across the city that need to understand, and I'm sure many understand, the need for health care, child care in this city, that they would be on board to assisting them with funding in any way that they could as they move forward. So it is a cut, but I agree with it.
Councilmember Nager?
I would be willing to go ahead and support that cut.
And I'll just add, obviously this was the hardest one for me as we got down to it because of the sizable. I will say that I also, and we've said this a lot, we're trying to look at the totality of what we're giving, and even with that cut, if you add up what will go directly, the path we're on, depending upon what some decision we make, we're still looking at giving roughly close to $1 million for child care services through this grant program of that $10 million. So while it's a cut to one program, I still feel very good about how we've tried to balance child care needs throughout the community with these dollars. With that, the next one is the First Congregational Church of Topeka for their trauma care and shelter for teens. That request is for $340,000. Any thoughts, council members?
Same question. Is First Congregational Church of Topeka in the audience, or
Is anyone here or on
Online.
Zoom? Maybe. Someone's trying to talk, maybe? Can they unmute themselves, or do you have to unmute them? If you are with them, feel free to unmute yourself and say, "Hi, it's me."
Hi, it's me.
Hi, can I get your first name?
My name's Barbara.
Hi, Barbara. Basically, I'm going to be asking the same question that I asked the Congregational Church. What was it?
Open Arms.
Open Arms Ministry. Sorry, this is a 60-year-old brain. Okay. Since you are going to be working with unsheltered community, right? These kids that, don't have a place to stay, and knowing that the city is launching Equity Access Shelter, and not knowing if you're already partnered with them, and if not, would you be willing, again, we're talking about to track numbers, to track when someone leaves, when someone comes in, the services, et cetera, and if the city is open to that, which I don't see why they wouldn't be. Is that something you would be open to?
Of course we would.
Thank you.
Of course. We coordinate all the way along. I've been making notes on who I can partner with in a number of ways.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm supportive, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Nager, any questions or anything you'd like to add?
I support this going through.
All right, I do too. Salvation Army of Topeka for utility shutoffs and individuals facing housing needs, $25,000. I am supportive of this one moving forward.
As a Chair.
All right. Florence Crittenden Services of Topeka. Their request stands at $153,000. The original request was $250,000. So as with a lot of them who made some big cuts for us, thank you very much. And I am supportive of this one moving forward.
As am I.
Agreed, Chair.
The next group is Breakthrough House. They have two. One is for $7,300 to help their payee program. The next one is for their residential program for mental health. This is also one of my next recommended cuts, so I'll toss it out there. It's not a huge one, but again, this is playing with the numbers. I'd like to reduce it from $625,000 to just a flat $600,000. Again, in my list of things, that helps us get a little closer to the 10 million number. But I will throw that certainly out for discussion or commentary. what are you doing, Duncan? Whichever way you'd like to go with it.
Give me just a minute.
Yep, no problem.
I would agree, Chair.
Any
And
comments, Councilmember?
I would be amenable to that as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
The next one is Love Fellowship Church, daycare for congregants, $25,000. Any comments on this one?
Yes, Chair, I am supportive of it. I think that this is one of those examples of what may feel in some ways like a drop in the bucket, but the ripple effect that it could have with them being accepting children outside of their congregation, in addition to what they see as being a new business. I think he had stated that he was part of that entrepreneurs or whatever, some class of that nature, to expand and to grow it and be able to gain additional funding. So I'm definitely supportive of this.
I would agree. Anything you'd like to add, Councilmember Nager?
I agree.
All right. Vallejo Behavioral Health for Assertive Community Treatment Program, $562,635. We had some pretty significant follow-up questions to this. I was good with their answers helped me a lot, give me some context as to what it's going to serve and how, and I am supportive of this one moving forward. Any comments or?
This is one that I did have an asterisk by, because they also proposed other cuts, down to, they had cut it down by the proposed 17.7%, but they also had alternative cuts as well, where they cut almost 24% and just over 40%. And so this was one of the areas that I thought that we could also look at going ahead and working with them on that reduction to get us closer to that $10 million figure for us totally as the city.
Okay, I've got my little chart here. I'll put the asterisks next to that, so as we get to the end, we can come back and talk about it if we need to.
And I would just say, I think we need to be cautious with this. Just knowing the work that Vallejo does and how much is needed, more funding, more positions, all of that, more beds are needed. It makes me cringe a little bit to think about cutting. So I'm supportive of this amount as it is.
Okay. And I am too at this time. Like I said, I will put the asterisks next to it, and if we need to circle back, we can put it on that circle back list that we've put it and another one on. The next two are from Cornerstone of Topeka. One is for $117,000. One is for $172,103. I've already mentioned earlier, much like Habitat and much like the earlier project with some of these other projects, they're going to get these things built right away, and we are in desperate need of them. So I am supportive of both of them. Any other comments?
As am I, and they have made thoughtful cuts at every part of the process. So I really appreciate that work that went into that.
I support as well.
The next one is Arts Connect for their art healing for veterans and first responders for $59,565. Councilman Valdivia-Ackel, anything you want to add to that?
I know that the two programs that Arts Connect had come in with, it was hard being so supportive of the arts and the healing capabilities of art. And with that said, I'm very hopeful and intrigued with what this specific program will be able to do to help and assist our veterans. So I am supportive.
Councilmember Nager?
I'm supportive.
I am too. All right. We're getting there. Topeka Center for Peace and Justice, job training for juvenile programs. Their request is at $100,469. Councilmember Nager, any thoughts?
I'm good with this moving forward.
Councilmember? No, you're good.
Let's see.
Find my other piece of paper.
I think that this was for what looks to be a strong restorative justice program. And I think it's also new at this level for Topeka Center of Peace and Justice, so I am supportive of it.
As am I. The next one is Catholic Charities of Northeast Kansas for wraparound services and building repairs. I'll go first because this is my next cut. Their current request is at $180,980. I would suggest we reduce it by $30,980 to get us at $150,000. I know they made some cuts for us earlier. I tried to go through it and look at where that might impact them, and it may impact them more with some of their repairs, but it won't too bad harm the wraparound services they want to offer, and so that's why I targeted this one for a possible reduction. So I'm open to any comments or on that.
I agree.
Councilmember
I would be
Ray?
open to that.
Okay. Well, we move on. SLI, training and equipment to help those with intellectual disabilities. Their current request stands at $212,780. That's a reduction of about $60,000+ from their original first request. Any comments or thoughts?
I think that, there were some cuts made, and with the ongoing needs that this particular organization has, I am supportive.
I would agree.
I would agree.
Next one on my list we already did was the CRC. The next one is the Central Topeka Grocer Oasis Group for the green grocery in the food desert. All right. I think I have a couple questions about this one for staff. I just to give everyone a heads up, I have 3 more cuts on my chart, which I think get us there. This is one of them, but this is one of, as I mentioned earlier, that's a weird amount cuts because this is kind of what got us there. So their current request is at $640,000. I am suggesting we reduce it to $628,136. That's a reduction of $11,864. I want to make sure they get funded. So that's my first thing I will toss out to the group. My second one is a question to staff. Maybe you know the answer to this. So this money has to be spent, or at least contract signed, whatever definition you want to use, by the end of 2024. Okay. So by the end of 2023, are we in a position, or maybe midway through 2024, to go to this group? Because I think our concern is we think they're going to get there, but we're concerned that it can't actually be started. Is there a way to go back and say mid-2024, hey, you got 6 months. Is it going to happen? And if it's not, we can still work with you in some other areas, but this is use it or lose it dollars. Can we recapture those dollars and put them somewhere else if we work with that group to do that?
You could put in a caveat that you are approving this funding subject to that condition, and then we could do that. So yes.
I would actually recommend that procedure is followed for every one of your
That was my
awards.
next question.
Yes.
This group, I think, just brought it forward as we talked to them at the last meeting as to that. Because everyone, as we have been very clear from day one, will have to keep good records, will have to submit those to us, will have to meet what they promised to do, and we will be checking up on them. So if any of you here today are surprised by that all of a sudden, you were paying attention the last couple of months. But I know you are, so.
Chair, we'll probably make those inquiries on January 1 of 24.
Just to check in and then go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think our biggest issue is make sure that we had that was legally okay with these dollars once those were done.
And probably best practice.
Okay, Councilmember Valdez-Viacula.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the tracking component is what kind of keeps me up at night. Even though we understand these are once-in-a-lifetime dollars, there's not really a lot of guidance. But for us to prove to the citizenry that we're not just going to let this go and not record it. And so with the successes, we build on those successes as a community. And we also hold, as we hold ourselves accountable, we hold our citizenry accountable with this money.
So best practice would be to have an agreement when you give them the funds that says, yes, we're agreeing to track, we're agreeing to check in, we're agreeing that we have to spend this, we're agreeing we know there's a clawback if we don't. So absolutely, that is best practice, and we can totally do that for you.
Okay, so there's a couple more questions kind of circling around that. Should we wait until the end about the Spanish?
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah,
Okay,
because
okay.
that kind of goes for everyone who's
Okay.
made that pledge.
Got it.
Okay, so that's our first issue, which we've now addressed. All right, so the second one is my proposed reduction. Any thoughts, comments, objections,
Agree.
hurrahs,
I
whichever?
agree.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you very much, council members. All right, the next one is It Takes a Village, $200,950. I'm supportive of that effort.
As am I.
As am I, and I'm just thrilled to see what they're going to do and how they will succeed with these young people in the future.
Next one is the Gil Carter Initiative for $50,000 for food and clothing assistance for LMI individuals. Any thoughts?
I'm good with this moving forward.
Agree.
Same here. The next one is community action, rental assistance, food, etc. for those in need. I told you I had 3 more cuts left. I now have 2 more left, and this is one of them. This was probably for me, I guess one of the larger cuts too, in that they're currently asking for $700,000. I would propose we reduce it to $600,000. I went back through there many times, and again, like anybody, it's not ideal, but I believe they can still fulfill what they're trying to do and help a lot of people with $600,000. So that's, again, I will just throw that out there for discussion.
This was one of my proposed cuts too. So I'm right there with you. I agree.
Yes. Agree.
Great. Next one is Poppins Landing Senior Center. Their current ask is $365,805. That was a hard one to say for some reason. Their original request was close to $500,000, so I do appreciate, and they made cuts on each round, so I do appreciate that very much. And I'm supportive of this one moving forward.
As am I, Chair, and I think that, with what we have approved and hopefully gets okayed before the governing body with East Topeka Senior Center, with LULAC, with Poppins, what we're seeing is trying to show to our elders and community and to their families that we see you, right? That we see you and we want to help and by giving this money. So yes, definitely.
All right. Anything you want to add, Councilmember?
Nope, I agree.
All right. The next one is, and there's actually 2, we'll just take them both up, YWCA of Northeast Kansas, since they answered their questions in the same email, I believe. The first one was for their trafficking victims program for $101,636. The next one was for their facilities so they can continue to do their services for $318,000. I am supportive of both of these moving forward.
As am I.
As am I, Chair.
The next one is Stay Calm, which is the marketing and education program to stay calm in emergencies. Their ask is for $32,900. Any thoughts or comments?
I'm good with this moving forward.
I agree.
I agree. I thank them for the cut they made when I asked for some reductions in what I call the marketing trinkets. But the rest of these dollars will go towards their core program, which I think is very important. The next one is combined 2 different grants. Boys and Girls Club of Topeka. One is for $180,000. One is for $150,000. I'm going to make 2 recommendations here. I told you I had 2 cuts left. This is my last one. I'd like to do 2 things. I'm proposing 2 things. One, that we combine these into one grant request instead of 2 separate. And then from that, we reduce it by $50,000 total. So their new total would be $280,000. And the reason I asked that we put it into 2 is because that then gives them some flexibility when they have to report their spending. So for instance, one of these is to buy new buses. If the buses turn out to be cheaper or they get a deal, they can then use any of the other dollars on their staff recruitment and retention program, which is the second part of this. So that's why I would combine them and then make the reduction to give them some flexibility with those dollars. So that is my recommendation and suggestion. Comments?
I know it's a hard cut, Chair, but as stated before, this is kind of about shared suffering to some extent, so I agree.
And I would be amenable to that.
Have you been keeping a track here, Clay? Would you tell us what our current amount stands at?
Yes. See me, I gotta enter one more thing in here. Our current amount is 9,902,000.
What? I have it right at 10 million. Thought it was right there. So the point is, we have hit our, what'd you say it was? Really? Dang it. Can you repeat that number?
9,902,000.
So that leaves us,
98.
are you sure? I believe you.
I could
but
be wrong. I've been keeping track, but
I believe you. I just want to make sure we're really right, because we're either going to go back and see if we can add dollars, or we're going to
Would you like her to go through the list?
yeah.
be right at 10 million. And now we haven't finished them. We have 5 left. So
Shall we
why
go
don't-
ahead and finish up the 5 and then come back?
Yeah, or we have 6 left. So let's finish those, and then we'll see. El Centro de Services for their immigrant. Good Lord, my mouth is dry. Sorry. Immigrant Assistance Clinic. Their current request stands at $221,795. I'm supportive of that moving forward.
As mine.
As am I.
I have no more cuts to offer for what it's worth to the group. So, Community First International Academy programs for schools. The current request stands at $597,727. Thoughts or comments?
I think that, go ahead.
You're good. Okay. As there were different programs and it was kind of broken down into different easily chunked out portions, I had an asterisk by this as far as cuts, but I'm good with this moving forward as is.
As am I. I think that this is a novel and compelling use of funds, and I'm excited about it to see what comes of it, and I am supportive.
I just lost my place. Where are we at? Sorry. TARC, Feeding Clinic for Children in Need, $72,500. I am supportive.
Yep.
As am I.
All right, 3 left. Family Service and Guidance Center for their new Youth Crisis and Recovery Center, $500,000. Any comments, questions?
They did a really, big lessening of amounts
They
from
did.
the initial 1 million,
Yeah, the original.
and I am in support.
I am in support. We also got that picture of the fact that they're building it right now. So we know that these dollars are going to go straight to work.
Next one is Housing and Credit Counseling for $76,140.
I support.
I do also.
As do I.
And the last one is Hearts for $45,027.
Support.
I'm good with this moving forward. Yep.
All right, so let's figure out where we are, because God knows I make mistakes. Just ask my wife. So, are you still at the 900?
Yes.
All right, let's go through this together, because
Okay.
I don't know what I've done here. God help me, Excel. Don't fail me now. Yeah, I'm right. All right, you ready? Go through this with me?
Yep.
All right. Give us all a moment, folks, if you want to get up and use the bathroom or something. We're not going to break, but you get to listen to us do the clerical work here.
I'm gonna
All
go
right.
ahead and get some laundry moved around. I'll
There
be
you
right
go.
back.
Go for it. All right. LULAC, 105,000.
Yep.
And this will be good. Everyone can hear where we think we're at. Topeka North Outreach, 20,000. East Topeka Senior Center, 47,490. IBSA, 92,000. Patterson Family Child Care, 41,280. Community Center at Ripley Park, the first one is 25,696. The second one is 19,325. Positive Connections, 27,000. Mirror Inc., 360,000. Cornerstone of Topeka, 226,256. Open Arms Outreach Ministries, 127. Habitat for Humanity, 340,000. Sorry, I'm going blind over here. CRC, the first one is 214,000. The Medical Society Health Access, 20,000. Prevention and Resiliency Services, 105,498. Doorstep Inc., 133,000.
Yep.
Positive Connections, 150,987. Scent, 30,000. Child Care Aware, 500,000. First Congregational of Topeka, 340,000. Salvation Army, 25,000. Florence Crittenden, 153,000. Breakthrough House, the first one, 73,000. The second one, 600,000. Love Fellowship Church, 25,000. Vallejo Behavioral Health, 562,635. Cornerstone of Topeka, 117,000, and then the next one is 172,103. Arts Connect, 59,565. Topeka Center for Peace and Justice, 100,469. Catholic Charities, 150,000. SLI, 212,780. Community Resource Council, 800,000. The Central Topeka Grocer Oasis Group, 628,136. It Takes a Village, 200,950. Gil Carter Initiative, 50,000. Community Action, 600,000. Poppins Landing Senior Center, 365,805.
That would be it. I have 264,805.
There we go. That was their original, yeah. They went back and
So 365,805?
correct.
365,805. Okay.
Yep. I think they had a couple options in their response questions.
Okay.
So what's that get you to?
Let me. 10 million.
Man,
and
we are
$3.
good.
$3.
Three. Okay.
So I'm probably.
We're not done then. Let's keep it going. God, if my wife was here, she would love this stuff. This is numbers. YWCA, 101,636. Stay Calm, 32,900. Boys and Girls Club of Topeka, 180,000 for the first one. We're combining them, but I've got in my spreadsheet is 180 and then 100,000 for a total of 280,000. YWCA again, 318,000. El Centro, 221,795. Community First International Academy, 597,727. TARC, 72,500. Family Service and Guidance Center, 500,000. Housing and Credit Counseling, 76,140. And Hearts, 45,027.
Yep.
And you're still $3 off?
I'm $3 off.
What?
Hold on here. Make sure my sum is correct. Yeah.
Was it maybe it was the Central Grocery Oasis?
Probably was.
Because that's a
$3
weird.
out of your pocket.
I will cover the $3 if that happens to be the case. I will leave it here today. And if it is not the case, then we're good.
That's $3,000.
Yes. Let's take a break. I am sure it is an error on my end. It wouldn't be the first time.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, we're all good. You know, sometimes you just type something in wrong, and that's why we go through this process. Believe it or not, there are much bigger problems in the world than that little error today on our part.
But city manager was going to find it.
That is why we hired him. Earning his keep right there. With that, all the numbers that I went through are correct. We are exactly at $10 million. If there are any final comments, concerns, objections, suggestions, ideas from my council members, I will take them now. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to forward these recommendations on to the full governing body.
Okay, question before we vote
Yep,
on
that's why
that. So these are the things that I had put out. Spanish Services Incorporated. So we sent those questions out, but is there, when this comes from an equity standpoint and knowing that any number of these are going to be working with Spanish-speaking populations or the parents of exclusively Spanish-speaking populations, what can we do to be stronger from the equity standpoint as a city when we're getting back in these? Well, we can look into that. We can look into having translation services, or we can look into having, a document in Spanish, et cetera. Understood that these are not contractual obligations, but understanding also we're trying to hire a DEI person, and these are the places where these conversations need to be had. So is there something that we can put in the, whatever it is that they're going to sign?
So that each agency also focuses on this as part of their grant requirements? Just making sure I understand the question.
Well, we didn't ask questions of every single entity that made it into the second and third round, but a number we did. And those were the ones where I was looking at the numbers of the populations that they served, and if they served higher Latino populations, did they have services in Spanish? And then also when I saw that there was a dearth of Black and Brown in there in some of these organizations that they serve, what were they doing in the way of outreach? And that was, I can use as an example, PARS. And they were just wonderful in their responses. So now that we're just talking about this right now, how do we work that into, or legally, can we work that into, again, talking from a place of equity and inclusion, into a form that they sign that has everything else?
Well, I guess as a policy standpoint, as a policy maker, you guys can put additional restrictions on money when you give it. So a good example of that, for example, is like the state of Kansas. If you get a grant from them, you have to agree to comply with the discrimination ordinances or statutes on the books. So we always have those in our contracts that you will not discriminate. It's state law that we do. So similarly, at the local level, if you wanted to put additional requirements into agreements, you could as policymakers. That would just be a policy choice. If you wanted it for everything moving forward, you could do an ordinance, or you could do votes on if you would like it. You would just want consistency so that it didn't become a singular thing where only certain organizations had to follow it or not follow it. So I guess my answer is yes, you can do it. It's just a policy choice, and we can write it however you would like. It would just be something as a governing body you would need to make a directive to do.
And that would have to be decided, as is all of this, by the governing body ultimately.
Ultimately, if you wanted it to have the strongest legal backing so that you couldn't get challenged by an organization, I would recommend you do that via ordinance. That via ordinance, you make certain requirements for contracting or grants, or that would be the strongest way to do it.
So I'm just really throwing things out right now because it's all kind of stirring around. When we talk about this diversity, equity, and inclusion person that we want to hire, is this a point of what we're looking at as some of what we want to be about as a city moving forward? I know that that's not just asking you, you're the city manager. I know we have to have a conversation, but it seems to me that documents in Spanish, and I'm not saying every single thing, but basic documents in Spanish point to the way of equity to me, rather than not dealing and just looking away from.
It's our intentions to be, to communicate better in all assets, and certainly one of those things means to translate into Spanish and make sure that we're being very clear in what we're asking folks to sign.
But what they are doing, these organizations are doing, say like PARS, they said, yes, we're going to spend a couple of $100s on having the basic information about what we do at PARS in Spanish, because we've never had that before. That's what I'm saying. I mean, is this something that we want to take on as a city with intention moving out with the organizations that we are providing funding to? That may not be just a question for you, but I'm posing it out in the universe.
Can I have some time to think about it?
Sure.
If
Okay.
I'm an organization that works with the city for any of our various programs, and I come to the city and say, I really don't have a lot of materials in outreach materials in Spanish, and I don't even know how to get in touch with a translator, does Corey or any of our services say, well, we have some resources we can point you to that you can contact to either contract with them or work with them to develop those?
Chair, we're actually having some of those same concerns ourselves,
Okay.
which is why I'm not coming up with a
No,
direct,
well, and the
immediate
reason,
answer.
and that's fine. And the reason I ask that is if we, as we do work through that, as we work through this the rest of this year, and maybe you guys come up with those answers, at the very bare minimum, once we come up with those resources, we should include those with these applications to say, because we did ask every individual on the second round if they offered these services and if they could, were considering it. And this is totally off the top of my head, but I mean, I'd say 40% said we already offer it. Another probably 30 to 40% said, yeah, we just honestly don't know where to go to do that. And the other 20% may not have responded, and they may not have made the second round. But not just because of that, but some of them did. But I think the last 20% probably had the same issue. They don't know where to go. So I think part of it. So as we work through that, we've got a couple months here too. We can maybe at least at the bare minimum include
fine-tune.
that information.
To fine tune that before we get that form that they're going to sign.
And there might be some that we can do via simple contracting. I'll do some research too to figure out what is the legal framework.
Yeah.
Okay. Adding the other component in it is we asked about diversity in staff, board, and volunteering. I'm not trying to micromanage these organizations. I'm just saying these are some of the questions. So these are some of the conversations I would like us to continue to have before we get that form all figured out. Then I also had tracking. We've talked about tracking. We've talked about, and you have said, City Manager, about we need to do a better job of tracking. So I'm requesting with this better job in tracking that we actually have something written that can be provided to the council, whatever date before the end of the year, that's going to say what these tracking mechanisms are. So we're not left thinking it's going to be something that we were told, not by you, by anybody, and then we go looking for it and it ain't there.
I can assure you that I had a conversation with our finance director last night. It's keeping her up at night. So we are very much focusing on that.
So that would be yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, and then the last thing is the posting of the applications that were awarded money for transparency purposes. Will those be posted, which I believe they should, along with the amounts awarded? Will those be posted somewhere?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, we had said that our promise was after this process was complete that we would make those available to the public for review as it heads to the council.
I think we all think it's important.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's
Yep.
all I got.
Anything you'd like to add, Councilmember Nager?
You two covered it. Thank you.
Well, with that, I would accept a motion to forward the final recommendations onto the full governing body for approval.
So motioned.
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Whew. All right. It's not done yet, but I'm glad we got to where we got today. All right, we're not done yet. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on to the what will probably be a very brief but important discussion on the legislative agenda. Then we'll take like a 5 or 10 minute break and then come back for our last agenda item of the day. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our staff attorney, Amanda Stanley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So in your packet, you have an updated legislative agenda. Everything's as you saw it before. However, there is one addition that we would like for you to consider. This is one that we mentioned at the governing body meeting, and it deals with really equity of punishment. It came as a recommendation from our prosecution division. This last legislative session, the legislature changed the rules for DUI, so there is no longer any mandatory jail time for driving under the influence. However, what has not been changed is that there is still 5 mandatory days jail for driving when your license is canceled, suspended, or revoked. And this can have a real disproportionate impact on people trying to get out of the cycle of poverty and fines and imprisonment. And so our prosecutors just really feel like it's inequitable that you can drive under intoxicated and not get jail time, but you can drive because you're trying to get to work and your license was suspended and have 5 days jail time. So that can be really hard to get under. So we would like to add to the legislative policy to ask the legislature to look at this punishment and make it a discretionary at the municipal level. We feel like the local level, dealing with these individuals, it is far easier for us to find the correct level so that if someone's truly just doesn't care that they don't have a license, that's far different than the single mom that's trying to get to work and get out of the cycle. So our chief of prosecution did pull 3 real life examples of Topeka citizens who are in the cycle. We start identifying information from them, obviously, in your memo. But those are some examples of how it would help directly our citizens living and working in our community. So that is our ask.
Any questions? It's pretty straightforward for the most part. I mean, as Amanda said, it is about giving us a little more flexibility at the local level. I know I personally always get nervous regardless of what the area of law is when the legislature passes laws that are so blanket to the point that you can't make exceptions and end up harming certain subsets of the population compared to others, which is what I think this does and would help address that problem. So I am supportive of adding it to our legislative agenda.
I agree.
I agree. Thank you for finding that.
With that, I will make a motion to add this to our legislative agenda.
I would second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And with that, we shall add it. And then we shall take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back to deal with our last agenda item. Well, back. All right. Before we get to this agenda item, I will say we currently have a meeting scheduled for November 18th. We're going to keep that meeting for several reasons. There will probably be a follow-up to this conversation, which I'm about to talk about, this agenda item. While I don't expect it to happen, and I'm sure we will send it right back if they do, just in case at that November 15th meeting they want to try to send the ARPA stuff back to us for any reason, we'll have that date open to handle that. And then there's 1 or 2 other issues the city manager would like us to take a look at for consideration probably in December. So nothing, it won't be a huge agenda, but we're going to go ahead and leave that date on there for our end of the year cleanup, if you will. All right, the next one's on the agenda. They're split into 2. It's really one conversation, and I'll explain why we're having it. First of all, you won't be asked to make any decisions today. This is the beginning of what I'll call information discussions to get us towards a goal, an end goal here. We've had a housing trust fund on the books since before I got on the council. I think it was voted on the year before I got here, so it'll be almost 4 years now. And it's kind of just been sitting there, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And at some point, and I've said this before in big, large council meetings, if we're going to have it, we need to figure out how to make it work for us instead of just saying we have it. I've been out in the community and talked to future stakeholders about what the sort of the first magic number we need to get to is to make that viable, and that seems to be around the $1 million mark. And we're closer than you think, as we will hear here pretty soon. The other thing is, at some point, we have to talk about some ongoing revenue sources to continue to provide dollars for that, and staff and I have had some meetings about that I think have been pretty productive. And we also, at some point, will have to have a conversation about where we hold that money, whether it continues to be with the city or with somebody like the Community Foundation, where stakeholders feel more confident writing checks to that program versus the quote-unquote city of Topeka, because that's sometimes a concern. So that's part of these conversations, because we sort of end up having these on the fly when we finally discuss it in the full council without sort of an organized plan. The second part of this, which will be a lot of this conversation today, will also talk about a land bank program. It was brought to the council once before. There is some support, lots of questions. And so the next time it gets there, we want to make sure that a lot of those questions have been at least answered and that we've got a pretty good plan. At some point, you will probably hear an idea festering out there somewhere among a few of us that shows that the land bank program and the housing trust fund can work together in connection with one another to give us a program that supports each other very well financially for both programs. And so that will at some point come before this body and hopefully before the full council. And the last part of this is the changing our culture of property maintenance work has been tremendous. And starting next year, you will see many of those proposals being put forward. These programs are not at the top of that list. They are some notes within the report that Karen Black gave us. And at some point, they will be part of that conversation. And I don't want us to have to go backwards and spend a few months having them again. If we can sort of do some of that work now, and then when they do come up, say, hey, we've been doing those conversations. We don't have to slow this process down, that we're trying to make sure it keeps moving forward. So those are all the reasons that we're starting this conversation today. It is not going to end today. We will talk about it again in November, and then we will continue this conversation with the goal of putting something in front of the council at some point within the first quarter or first half of next year. So I want everyone to understand the timeline. It's not always as fast as people want it, but we're here to get it started. And I want to let people know there's a commitment to do this moving forward. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Feyender.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm going to give a real quick update on our housing trust fund, kind of where that sits in terms of what we have in there and what we've done to date. And then I'll move into a part two of our discussion on land bank that we started back in the spring and get a little more in depth there. As far as the Topeka Housing Trust Fund that was mentioned, we have a total of $750,000, so not quite to our $1 million target, but pretty close. About $500,000 of that is from public sources that the governing body directed there. Another $250,000 is from private sources. So that's where it sits right now. We have done some outreach and inquiries of organizations in town about further contributions to that. And this hit right about the time your pot came out earlier this year, your ARPA pot. So I think people are more serious or seriously considering thinking of donating to the fund once that smoke kind of settles, and it looks like you're well on your way with that today. So that's where it is. We had met quite a few times with our housing review committee, Affordable Housing Review Committee, which governing body appoints, and did come up with a framework for using the trust fund dollars. Majority of it would be into developer assistance, new units, guaranteed units of affordability, with another smaller portion going towards homeowner assistance and then tenant and landlord assistance. So I think that was sent in your packet. So unless there's any questions with that, I'll stop before I go into the land bank presentation.
Are there any questions from either committee members? No.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned and as I hinted at, we did start that conversation on the land bank back in the spring. It garnered several questions, which we have been able to maybe go back and refine some of our answers some of our options that we want to present today. I'm not going to go into the, City Attorney Stanley gave a great legal background as to what the land bank can and can't do. I'm not going to touch on all of that and rehash that necessarily. I do want to remind you, though, on a couple things for refreshers. What are we talking about? What is a land bank? It is an independent agency of a city with the authority to acquire, hold, and manage and convey abandoned, tax foreclosed, or otherwise underutilized or distressed property in order to convert those properties back into productive use. As a reminder, this was a huge priority coming out of the housing study, was one of our top 4 big recommendations. And so that's what a land bank is. In terms of the key things that would do, I think I'm going to move to this slide because I think this tells the bigger story for why we would even want to do this, or what this gives us that we don't have right now. And the land bank has a couple powers. First and foremost, being able to forgive outstanding property tax. And that is a huge advantage to having a land bank and having them acquire or hold property to convey it for productive use. While the property is in the land bank, it is also exempt from collecting property tax or I guess accumulating property tax while it is in the land bank. So that's great from a taxing standpoint. So obviously tax sales and county tax sales would be a very, very logical pool that we would target with the land bank, as you'll see here. And then the last power is that's worth noting is just the ability to acquire and cause the rehabilitation of property, again, to get it back on the tax rolls. So it is a legal enough entity that it can be the owner and the contractor and the developer all rolled into one to make sure those properties are put back into productive use. Okay. Let me we'll skip to then slide 8, where just we had about 32 other communities in the state that currently have a land bank. We went and did a little more drilling into 4 of those that we know are fairly successful and fairly larger at our type of scale that we're looking at. So we have some metrics there regarding how their board member composition is, where they, how much staffing they give it, funding mechanisms, number of properties in there, et cetera. So you can kind of see that. And that gave us a good feel for, as we got into our other research point, which is, since I noted the most logical pool of properties to target would be county tax sale properties that have back taxes. How is our current tax sale process working in terms of the outcomes? Is there a fit for a land bank here that makes a lot of sense? And I would, not to cut to the chase. Yes, there is slack. There is a pool here that definitely, if a land bank can be more active and intentional with the properties it acquires or accepts, and then you can put rehab funds to those properties, you can put those back out in the community at a much higher hit rate than you would than just leaving it up to a little bit chance through the tax sale process. This data, a lot of data there, but a couple key things. So this looks at the past 5 years of residential tax sales in the county. This is the cream of the crop of tax sales. This excludes vacant lots, but only 13% of all tax delinquent residential properties were sold through the tax sale process, meaning there's a lot of others that were not. So these are the most feasible, these are the most viable candidates to get out there and be productive. And so this is the data that comes from the cream of the crop, as I said. About half of those were sold in our most distressed neighborhoods, our at-risk and intensive care areas. Another quarter or so were in our outpatient. Again, fits right with our priorities of where we would want to reinvest. So those at-risk intensive care properties, average sale price was a little bit over $8,000. To give you some context, the average residential price in our NRP area is about $58,000. That's the average value, not average sale, but just the average value, just to give you some context. So these are pretty distressed properties in our most distressed areas by and large. After the sale, the post-sale, most of them, 82%, had a positive value change. However, if you look a little closer, that wasn't a big jump necessarily. We had 3/4 of the ones that had a positive value change were under $20,000 in value, and another and half were under $10,000. So positive, going in the right direction for the most of them, but again, not moving the needle tremendously by and large. And so we see a opportunity there for the land bank to step in and actually have a pool of properties that we could probably control the outcomes a lot better than just kind of leaving it up to chance. So let me move on to, so what this led us to was kind of refining some of the models and options we had presented back in the spring. And again, this is just, again, to get the conversation, or to keep the conversation going and have somewhere to start. So we've come back after working with, again, Corey Wright with Housing Services and Dan Warner in Planning. We put together what we thought might be two very viable models, and I'll explain these here. First, both models are land banks that purchase residential tax sale property, or they also can accept donations. So that's the same in both. Where it starts to differ a little bit is in Model 1, we would have kind of a predetermined contracting arrangement with our housing partners. Those are our CHODOs in Topeka, which would be Cornerstone, Habitat, Scent, for instance. They do the work. We help fund through the land bank the rehab portion. We haven't. This is too weedy as to how much you fund. Do they have any skin in the game, sort of thing? Are we using the land bank funds for a match? But by and large, you would need something funded to help with the rehabs of those tax sale properties, and then the housing partner could either use that to sell to a homeowner, of which then those funds could help replenish the land bank fund, or they can use them for rental purposes, which you wouldn't then get the sort of return back into the fund for rental purposes, although I suppose that can also be discussed. But that's kind of that first model. The difference then in the second model is instead of necessarily contracting with those CHODOs, we have the capacity of the Housing Services Division to scope the work out with our inspectors, rehab inspectors that we do every day, and then contract directly with builders. So we have a list of builders that are that we partner with on our rehab programs every day, doing hundreds of properties throughout the city every year. So that can be a more direct sort of use of the land bank in that sense, and then we would end up selling that. Or I would say the land bank would end up conveying to a homeowner. Again, this is envisioned to be all on the affordable side, and then that could replenish the land bank fund to do more purchases and rehab. So that's the difference in those two models. And then the last sort of options, which if you you may have had some questions out of those models, and here's a couple questions that we could foresee, which is one, who makes those decisions? Namely, there is a requirement to have a quote-unquote board, a land bank board, but that can be pretty much whatever the city council would foresee that being. So we have a couple options up here where the whole body as a whole could serve as a board. You could have a governing body committee serve as a board. You could do a little mix of appointing a board between citizens, professionals, stakeholders. We have an affordable housing trust fund review committee that you've already appointed. Maybe that can be part of the mix. So some decisions have to be made on who is making the ultimate decisions, which will tell us a lot about what the pace of this process will look like, and where the accountability rests, and then ultimately the budget options. So both of those models kind of hint at purchasing, and then also funding rehab of improved properties. We don't want to get necessarily tied down to vacant properties in a pilot setting. So we think the sweet spot would be existing improved residential properties. And the budget, we kind of so we have the staff between planning and housing services. We don't have to hire anybody necessarily to do that. The funds, we're looking estimated to $65,000 to $75,000 for purchase and rehab per property. I'd say minimum, you're looking at, say, we just threw a number out there, $350,000 pilot budget, and what does that get you? So under Model 1, that could get you over 2 years, maybe 7 units. If you assume there's a couple are homeowner and you don't get that full replenishment of the fund. Then Model 2, if we do nothing but homeowner sales, then we would have anywhere from 9 to 10 units, maybe over 10 years, because we get to stretch that $350,000 as a revolving fund a little more. So we just want to start somewhere, throw something out there that seems very reasonable to achieve, and still make a difference in the community. So I will stop there and cede back all my time.
So here's why I'm dumping all this information on you today. To start the conversation, as I said, but we sort of have here we're going to get to that $1 million in the trust fund. I'm confident of that. We're going to get there sooner rather than later. Been having those conversations with staff, and we'll get it figured out. And part of that will help us bring in some community dollars, which is essential to this program. But it can't survive all. It has to have some investment from us. So we have to start looking for ongoing revenue sources. Problem is, we're not going to raise taxes to do it. We don't have a line item in the budget that's very likely to start funding it. And we can't just raise fees because that doesn't generate enough dollars. So that is where creativity of thinking has started to come in on our part as we've looked through the programs and how we can do this. So what eventually you will hear from us, because it's not formulated yet all exactly, I'm working on it, but is a plan that allows us to leverage the trust fund dollars to assist the land bank program while simultaneously providing some revenue back into the housing trust fund, which is why we're sort of putting them together in these conversations. Now, whether the idea will go anywhere will be up to my 9 colleagues on the governing body and any committee members as we walk through that process. But the point of doing that is trying to find some creative ways that get these programs in place in this community and sort of solve some of the financial realities of operating these programs and making them successful long term. And so that has been the trick as we go through this, is how we accomplish both those goals. And so that is why, from my perspective moving forward, sort of the Housing Trust Fund will be a little bit connected to our land bank conversations until I'm totally shot down out of the water by whoever, whenever. But until then, I'm going to keep pushing it forward. So that is sort of why it's being put together here. I will ask if there's any questions, and then I'm going to see if anyone in the audience wanted to say anything. Councilmember, good Lord, Valdivia Alcala. I do know your name.
I know you do. I guess my question would be, and obviously not knowing a lot about land banks, are municipalities the only ones that can decide to do a land bank? Can a county?
Speaking off the top of my brain, which is always a little dangerous, but I believe the statute says counties can do it as well. The state could not, so it would be a city or a county thing.
Okay. And I mean, thanks for the information about the statewide land banks and the peer city land banks. I'm looking at some of the amounts of the properties that they hold, and I have some concerns and maybe just wanting a little bit more information as far as we have information, but I'm not seeing what defines this land bank as successful or not successful based on peer cities, Wichita, Pittsburgh, Hutchinson, Wyandotte County. So I don't know if the governing body would want that.
Yes, they will.
I sure would.
Yes, we can get you some of that.
And I always like it. It's always a pithy little phrase when it adds to the toolbox to remove obstacles for reutilization of vacant, abandoned, and foreclosed properties. But then I kind of think, well, what happens if we just get totally bogged down with properties and then we just become stagnant or at a standstill? And that would be worrisome to me. And that we would use existing staff. That's also a little bit worrisome to me as well.
So, Councilman, one thing I can share with you is that we would maintain discretion as to when to add properties and when not to. And so, to your concern about being bogged down with too many properties, we actually have the ability to choke that so that that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And I think what Director Finder is putting on the table is basically we would run this as a pilot program initially. And so we would be hesitant to add staff for the purposes of that pilot. If this became wildly successful, we may very well come back to governing body and have to change that. But I think we were trying to be economical.
So it would be moved specifically as a pilot.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. Yeah.
Start date, end date. So I guess we couldn't ask Director Finder what his opinion is because is that even allowed? I mean, what has been your experience with seeing whether municipalities are successful with land banks? Similar to what we're experiencing here in Topeka.
Well, Councilwoman, I think we don't have to look too much further than our neighbors in KCK as to what not to do. Not to throw any shade their way, but they got into it for different reasons, and as you see, there are over 7,000 properties. That's not where we're intending to go, because I think exactly speaking of getting bogged down. So our approach, again, the data tells us there's meat on the bones out there. You can drive around the community, know there's stuff to do, and we can probably be a little more strategic with where we make our purchases or accept our donations. So I agree. I think if we need to scale it up, then this pilot approach, and we think, we were successful at 7 or 8 properties. Well, we see another, 20, 30, 40 properties we could have gone after that we couldn't because we didn't scale it up yet. I think that's the sort of feedback I would want to have. We know But yes, we don't want to outkick our coverage, so to speak. We just, that is one lesson we're seeing. Wichita's a little new, and so we don't, I'd be curious to go back. You asked for some outcomes, and go back and try and bring that back to you, because that would probably be the next closest, the bigger, but the type of neighborhoods that we're going to be involved with. So I'm more curious as well, kind of how they're doing it.
So has there been any move at all to talk to the county if they would be interested?
No, actually, when you ask that question, Mike, we'll have to find out. I don't know if there's any law that would preclude a county and a city creating one together. We may want to look at that. Doesn't mean they'll want to do it, but
Well, it's always nice
Right.
to have different kids in
No.
the sandbox,
well,
playing
and they
together.
control the tax sales. So I mean,
Oh, well, would
that's
that be
an
a conflict?
no, I think it's an important component
Okay.
as their partner that they do that. So then we wouldn't be always at their mercy as much. We could actually work with them to get it done right.
From my understanding, and we've had our little work group that actually had the county counselor, so our little task force to come up with these recommendations had the county counselor's office as part of that. Yeah. And I think, while I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we can usurp the tax sale process by saying, hey, land bank wants, property X, can you keep it?
Right.
I think we can identify the properties so they can put them in the tax sale. And then we have to compete with, just like anybody else would compete to purchase. So through that cooperation, I think we definitely have a partner.
Well, I mean, I think it would be interesting to see if they would be interested in having a deeper partnership, kind of like, hey, we're all in this together, But I feel at this point, the conversation is needed, and I feel like I'm on the fence about it.
I'll get you there.
Thank you.
I'll
You
push
don't
you the
know
right
that.
way.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Nager, did you have any questions or anything to add?
Not at this time. I need to kind of digest this, but I'm excited about exploring it as an opportunity. So thank you guys for this presentation, and with where my brain is on this Friday afternoon after getting that ARPA stuff all set up, I will probably be rewatching this presentation later.
Was there a representative from Jump who had any remarks they wanted to make today? If not, that's okay too. But I wanted to give you the option to. We've talked with this, and we will continue to talk with them about these options. And I know them, like a lot of the other groups, that the ongoing source and getting this thing there is important to a lot of folks. And so I will continue to keep it pushing. Like I said, this is just the opening conversation. A couple months from now, you guys will be like, oh my gosh, stop talking about it. Let's get there. So that's my goal. Any other staff have any questions, comments, concerns? Council members, any final comments, questions, concerns? All right. Well, with that, that was it. Making sure there was nothing else on the agenda. We will adjourn this meeting.
Excellent.
Have a good weekend, everybody.